If you had thought that the 6th episode of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc was the peak of this season, then I have some surprising news for you. Episode 7 has just dropped and it was hands down the most satisfying episode yet. This is because it features the most anime exclusive content out of any of the episodes we have had thus far. To appreciate why this episode was so incredible, you have to go back to 10 years ago when these chapters that are adapted into this episode were first released. If you followed my channel, then you'll know for the longest time I've wanted Ichigo's arrival within the Soul Society to be adapted into anime form. His reaction following the Quincy's first invasion was some of my favourite manga material to read weekly within Bleach. When chapter 512 had first dropped, I remember printing out the last double page of the chapter because I loved the emotion and the artwork of Ichigo confronting Yhwach finally. It was impactful and an incredible piece of art. This moment was following Ichigo's emotional exchange with Byakuya, who we had assumed at the time was going to die, and had given his final request to protect the Soul Society to Ichigo. So you can tell that I was really invested to see how this week's episode would turn out. I kid you not, I've been looking forward to seeing the chapters featured within this episode to be adapted into anime form for the longest time. Episode 7 is titled Born in the Dark, and it adapts the final section of the Quincy's first invasion of the Soul Society, as we see Ichigo finally arrive at the Soul Society and briefly confront Yhwach, where he learns a shocking truth about himself, which leads to the Quincy leader referring to him as his son born in the dark, giving our first hint that Ichigo may have Quincy blood flowing through his body, and he may have inherited this from his mother. Episode 7 adapts chapters 511 to 514 of the manga, covering 4 chapters worth of manga material into this beautifully paced episode where we get so much more added material, and we even get to see a fleshed out battle between Yhwach and Ichigo, instead of a couple of clashes, which is what we were given within the manga. In addition to all of this, we were shown glimpses of the original battle between the Quincy and the Shinigami from 1000 years ago, where the designs for the original Gotei 13 that Kubo had revealed only last week were actually used within the anime. This is by far the most unexpected thing about this episode, and it proves the lengths that Kubo has gone to with his involvement in this new anime. I'm left speechless that they had featured these designs, as well as showing how Sasakibe had actually helped Yamamoto to defeat Yhwach, proving that the mysterious man standing behind Yhwach in last week's episode was in fact Sasakibe, like a lot of you had correctly assumed. So evidently there is so much to discuss with this episode, and let's begin by talking about what happens before the opening song. What if I told you that we don't even get to manga material until after the opening song, and the first 2 minutes of this episode feature anime only scenes where we are finally shown the original battle between the Shinigami and the Quincy. This entire sequence is in black and white with this old film grain effect, which is then overcast with a warm color tone that makes it feel like you're watching some major real-world historical event unfold. Within the first couple of minutes of this episode, we are shown the original Gotei 13 tearing the Quincy apart with some violent and uncensored imagery that conveys to you the merciless nature of them, which is the main reason why the Shinigami were successful back then. This builds upon this idea that since that first battle, the Shinigami have softened with time, and they are now a shadow of their former selves. For so long, we had imagined what this ruthless original Gotei 13 had looked like, but finally, thanks to Kubo's involvement within the anime, we are shown firsthand how powerful the first iteration of the Gotei 13 were. From their designs and brief appearances at the start of this episode, it had really felt like all 13 of the original captains were pretty much Kinpachi lookalikes, with their sadistic attack first and think later mentality. This anime only scene features Yhwach and his army making their arrival within the Soul Society, and a younger Yamamoto who is then shown front and center with his original squad walking behind him, and all of them look very sinister thanks to the effective use of the color black to conceal their appearance, making it seem as though they have just emerged from the darkness. Then a fantastic panning shot shows us a close-up of each of the original Gotei 13 members, and it is thanks to this that we can confirm that the Shohoin clan captain is in fact a man, despite his feminine appearance on the manga spread that we had last week. Admittedly, all of them look like they mean business, and we then cut to a sequence of each of them in action, with Unohana taking the lead as we get some visuals revealing how they had mercilessly cut down Yhwach's army. Sagisu's music here is to die for, and it's honestly a triumphant orchestra that complements the intensity of the animation here. We also see my man Zeidritz, one of Yhwach's men from 1000 years ago, that he had recognized during Zanka no Tachi South. The anime exclusive scene gives him a massive shout out as we are shown his final moments when he burns up thanks to the flames of Yamamoto. And my god, this scene of Yama where he is slowly marching towards Yhwach, stepping on the corpses of his men with his Zanpakuto burning. Now this is hype. What a contrast to the present day where the Soul Society has been utterly decimated. I absolutely love this, and genuinely it is such a treat. And it's an understatement to say that I had goosebumps. Now it might be getting old because every episode I'm saying that this was my all-time favorite moment, but genuinely this flashback has to be one of the best Bleach animated sequences because of the importance upon the story, the significance to the final arc of Bleach. It shows us the origin of the Gotei 13 and, in Yhwach's words, how far they have fallen. So the demise of Yhwach is fully revealed, with Sasakibe being shown to be hiding behind him under the corpses of his men as he ambushes him, impaling him from behind, with Yamamoto delivering the final blow. This is incredible and honestly an amazing way to show the significance of Chojuro. I know we didn't get to see Byakuya's speech about him during his funeral, but the anime flashback within episode 5 and now revealing that Sasakibe had assisted to take down Yhwach, all of this helps us to appreciate the legacy of Sasakibe and how it has been conveyed differently within the anime. This anime only sequence does a great job of emphasizing the bright red blood against the black and white, as it's really fitting the title of the final arc. 1000 years ago the Blood War had begun with the Quincy's blood being spilled. Now in the present day it is the Shinigami who have had their blood drawn in this inevitable war between these feuding groups. Honestly, I feel like I went on a bit of a tangent with the first 2 minutes of this episode, but can you honestly blame me? After the opening, the episode begins by adapting the start of chapter 511, taking us to another flashback that takes place quite some time after the events that we see at the start of the episode. We see an adorable Shunsui who comments on a painting of Yama from the original battle against the Quincy, as we see him covered in flames. A younger Yamamoto describes the portrait as that of a monster who had shown up within the Soul Society a long time ago because it was going through a rough time. The appearance of that flaming monster had only made things worse, as a foreshadowing for the present day, where he tells the young Shunsui that if this god of fire were to return, then it will signal the end of Yamamoto, which indeed is what had happened after he had activated his Bankai, once again becoming that monster. We see that Yamamoto ends up dying while standing on his feet. Following last week's episode, I had seen some people commenting online stating that Yama's death had felt cheap and it's not comparable to major deaths like that of Whitebeard from One Piece. But look at my man, he has been cut in two, and despite this, the lower half of his body remains standing through the sheer force of will alone. How can you tell me that this is not impactful and legendary? This is the resolve of Old Man Yamamoto, one of the greatest old geezers in the history of shonen anime and manga. This is truly a tragic loss, as the anime depicts the rise and fall of Yamamoto's Gotei 13. We see them at their peak during the original battle and now at their lowest hour. The rain pours down and the incredible detail depicted is awe-inspiring, as we have the rubble-filled background with the fresh blood on the battlefield, with the Cerete in complete ruin. Of course, Yama is all but dead here, but in a final act of defiance, he grabs Yhwach's cape with what little strength he has left. His arm is then severed as Yuha steps on his head. He explains to him that his organization has fallen victim to complacency during times of peace. Over the last 1000 years, the Quincy had adopted the merciless traits from the original Gotei 13. While the Shinigami over time had become softer, Yuha cites examples of Yamamoto not wanting help from Orihime to heal his arm after he had lost it during the Fate Karakura Town arc, or being reluctant to even ask for Ichigo's help against Aizen. He states that in the past, the Gotei 13 would have done absolutely anything to win no matter the cost, not caring about who was involved or affected as long as victory was ensured. Yuha describes the original Gotei 13 as a group of cold-hearted killers, and it was because of this reputation that they were feared by everyone. This group was led by head captain Yamamoto, who at the time embodied this merciless, ruthless nature more than anyone else. He cared very little even for the lives of his subordinates, which is a stark contrast to the present-day Yamamoto. Yhwach then delivers the final blow, killing Yamamoto after telling him that his Gotei 13 had died along with the Quincy 1000 years ago. The head captain's body is incinerated as he leaves no traces behind, as Yhwach then gives the orders to the sold out, his soldiers, to emerge from the shadows in order to thoroughly destroy the Soul Society. We get some awesome visuals of the soldiers emerging and just causing havoc, killing and destroying everything in sight. There are some heart-wrenching anime-only scenes here of some really violent acts, and I think even mentioning them would get me demonetized. These scenes left me stunned, and the anime does such an incredible job of taking the already established lows of this situation and sinking them even lower, and all of this happens right before our hero emerges, as Ichigo finally finally arrives within the Soul Society, and this is what takes us to the halfway point of this episode, with only one chapter of manga material adapted thus far, revealing that the staff can really be trusted to cut content because they are aware of what scenes are in need of expanding. After Ichigo saves Akon, we get to see him examine the state of the Serite as he witnesses his comrades that are fallen in battle before he appears before Byakuya. He reassures him that Rukia and Renji are still alive as Byakuya's speech is given so much justice here, and I genuinely was an emotional wreck during this entire sequence. The way the pouring rain is emphasized and the absolutely incredible voice acting and the detailed artwork all combined with the visual effects, especially after Ichigo hears Byakuya's final request, which leads to Ichigo's spiritual pressure overflowing because of his burning anger. Now the anime depicts this like steam just emitting from out of Ichigo's body, and it just envelops him. This entire scene was on a totally different level of impactfulness, as they even show Byakuya shedding tears, and I don't even know what to say other than bravo to Taguchi and the rest of the animation staff for such an incredible job well done. We really couldn't have asked for more, and what was given to us makes the 10 long years of waiting feel so worthwhile. The anger on Ichigo's face is palpable as the stage is set for him to finally confront the one responsible for all of this destruction. Ichigo fearlessly confronts Yhwach and Hashward, who try to leave before their path is obstructed by Ichigo's Tensar Zangetsu that is just hurled through the air and pierces the ground in front of them. Byakuya is once again shown as he comments on how Ichigo didn't respond after he had shared with him his final request. He understands that this is just the way that Ichigo is, because he knows his response without him even saying anything. He leaves the rest up to him as the anime then shows us Byakuya Zanpakuto completely shattering, which is a hint that he is pretty much on the verge of dying. After confirming Yhwach is the enemy's leader, Ichigo charges up and we get some incredible anime-only fight scenes that expand upon their brief encounter in the manga. They have several clashes in the air with these vibrant red and blue visual effects that emphasize their raw power and adds to the dynamic animation that feels so fluid and captivating here. Once Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho fails, he is then pinned to the ground as Yhwach tries to deliver a fatal blow, only for us to learn that Ichigo has subconsciously activated the Quincy technique Blut Veen, which protects him from being cut. The anime then cuts to black and shows the pulsating blue reishi surging through Ichigo's veins, and it's just a very impressive way to emphasize such a surprising revelation. After Ichigo gets back up on his feet, Yhwach tests if what he had seen was in fact Blut Veen by cutting Ichigo's arm, and sure enough, there it is again. He regrets that he had sent a pure-blooded Quincy to restrain Ichigo within Hueco Mundo, as being trapped within Kilge's prison had led to Ichigo activating the memory of his Quincy heritage within his spiritual pressure. Kilge's spiritual pressure had seeped into the depths of Ichigo's soul, awakening the core of his power, thus explaining why he was able to escape Kilge's prison, which is unable to capture a Quincy. Yuha tells Ichigo that he knows nothing about himself or even his own mother, and the anime has some nice visuals of Kilge's Reiatsu seeping into Ichigo's soul here, and it really does a great job of explaining what had actually happened. Yuha decides to force Ichigo into submission, and the episode is about to wrap up as Sagisu then reappears with an amazing remix of an old iconic Bleach OST titled Nothing Can Be Explained. I'm sure that a lot of you had cried yourself to sleep listening to this banger back in the day, and this music accompanies yet another anime-only sequence of Yhwach firing several arrows towards Ichigo before he learns that his time is up and he must return to the shadows. These arrows attack with some boulders attached to them, and they all encircle and crush Ichigo, and this was a really nice added touch, instead of having one little clash and then Yhwach having to leave like he did within the manga. This episode concludes with Yuha learning that his sense of perception was warped by Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu, thus explaining why he wasn't aware of how much time he had left. Of course, Ichigo gets back up, unwilling to let them just leave after everything that they've done to the Soul Society. He charges to attack again, but his Tensar Zangetsu is broken in two by Hashward as Yhwach bids him farewell as he refers to him as his son born in the dark. We then cut to the title card of the episode, which is revealed right before the credits. This was so cool and stylish, and frankly, I've never seen an anime reveal its title card like this before, and to make it coincide with a character saying an iconic line. This episode ends on an absolutely strong note, wrapping up material all the way up until the end of chapter 514, concluding the Quincy's first invasion of the Soul Society. Now the ending song is a little different here, so make sure you stick around to watch it, as we have more exclusive glimpses of the original Gotei 13 and the battle between the Quincy and Shinigami from 1,000 years ago. The haunting song that is sang by Senna Rin plays plays against these amazing visuals that once again give you goosebumps. I cannot believe the Bleach anime is this good, and what an amazing episode and an amazing flashback, which concludes with the ending song showcasing some more stunning new visuals of never before seen characters. There is so much to say about this episode, that's why this one has been the longest review out of any of my episode reviews, despite having only covered 4 chapters worth of manga material. We ended up having so much new anime only scenes to sink our teeth into. The episode had begun with this incredible flashback featuring the original Gotei 13, then we get another flashback featuring the young Shunsui, followed by the tragic death of the head captain, then Byakuya's emotional final request to Ichigo, as we then wrap events up with Ichigo's highly anticipated encounter with Yhwach, where he learns that he is a Quincy. I didn't think that they could top episode 6, but holy crap, they outdid themselves here. And the episode featured some of the most fluid animation that we have seen thus far, and the story beats that were expanded upon were also to die for, and I just feel jaw dropped after watching this episode. I need to now go back and rewatch it and compare it to the manga in preparation for my next video. I will be going over the anime only sequences in this episode, and I will break them down in greater detail in my manga versus anime video, which I'll drop tomorrow. So definitely look out for that. Episode 7 featured the most anime exclusive sequences, so there will be a lot to dive into and talk about, so you don't want to miss my next video. Let me know all of your thoughts on this incredible latest installment of the Bleach anime. Did you enjoy episode 7 as much as I clearly did? I can't wait to read all of your thoughts in the comments, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my